You're listening to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness with host Sean Teis, where we talk about leading fatherless families to the Heavenly Father.
Hey, welcome back to Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. My name's Sean Teis. I'm excited to have our guest today, PeggySue Wells with SingleMomCircle.com. It's great to have you with us, Peggy.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk shop with you, Sean.
We already had a pre-conversation before this recording, and I'm so excited to dive into talking about single mom ministry because you have an amazing story from your childhood and also in your marriage, and then also the ministry that God had you do. I mean, just an incredible journey. I feel like we're kind of on the same page. I was fatherless, and God brought me through it. Then I started a ministry. I think we have the same path. But just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself. Tell us about your ministry, and then we'll dive into your story.
Yeah, so when my single mom journey started when my youngest was a year old, and when she graduated high school, went into college, and then she's just gotten married, somebody said to me, "So you've single parented for a long time, so you should tell people like how it went because the kids they're healthy." And I kind of fought against that, but then she said, "Do you know tips that work and do you know things that don't work?" And I'm like, holy smokes, I know a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and I know a few things that work really, really well. So I decided to put together the book, The 10 Best Decisions a Single Mom Can Make. And this is the book. And then what I did was I chased down another author, Pam Farrell. And a lot of people know Bill and Pam Farrell because they champion marriage and they do really well with their ministry. But Pam she's the daughter of a single mom. And so when I went to her, I said, "Pam, I want to write this book and I want you to do it with me." And Pam said, "Just go find another single mom." And I'm like, no, because I said, "Pam, you're the hope, you're the promise, because you grew up as a single mom, but now you've got this very intact marriage. You and your husband are helping other people have very strong family foundations and strong faith." So I said, "I want you involved." She's like, "Okay." So we put it together. And then what we did was we put together all of our best tips. These were the things that worked as far as being a family. And I've had people that are not solo parents who have read the book and said the parenting advice and the tips were worth it. So we were really happy to read it. There's also some moms that sometimes feel like a single mom. If you have a frequently absent spouse, if he's maybe in the military or works a lot or what have you, there's a lot of things in there that will benefit that mom too.
Wow, it's so great. I love it. I love the different angles you had from Pam and from yourself, and then even your Single Mom Circle website. I was looking through that yesterday, just checking it out, and such great resources on there. If you're listening to this and you're a single mom, go to SingleMomCircle.com. Definitely check out the book. It's on Amazon. They even have a preview on Amazon. I looked at that yesterday with the table of contents and stuff like that. So the 10 best decisions a single mom can make. And so it's a great resource. And you've been on Focus on the Family with this. You've been on different podcasts, Family Life. I saw that yesterday. And so you've been out there and getting the word out there. And I think that's great because that's what our angle for this show and for our ministry is to spread awareness, to let people know what's going on with the issue of fatherlessness, but also letting people know that there's resources such as yours out there to help people on their journey. And so I really appreciate what you do. And so let's kind of rewind a little bit. Let's go back to some of your story. And so let's go back to your childhood. You were telling me before we got on the recording that you had some issues in your childhood with fatherlessness. Will you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I think I was 11 years old. As a kid, I could tell my parents weren't very happy with one another. And when I was 11 years old, they split. And so my mom remarried again, and that didn't work. She was divorced a second time and then married a third time. My dad also remarried. And in my situation, both my parents kind of moved on with their life, and then there's me, and nobody knew what to do with me.
Mhm.
And so there was just that very, awkwardness, that uncomfortableness as to where do I fit? Who do I belong to? Do I belong anywhere? And so when I got married, I was determined, boy, I'm going to make this work, like I'm just going to, no matter what, this marriage is going to stay together. And it didn't. There was just escalating situations that got worse and worse. And despite counseling and just doing all the things, you can't control another human. And we have a hard enough time controlling ourselves. If we were really good at controlling ourselves, we would also probably not be eating junk food and be in better shape. And we would be doing all the things that, we don't necessarily keep up with. And I can't, if there's no way to control another person, and people do what they do for their own reasons. And it rarely has anything to do with us. We don't always know what's going on in somebody else's background, because based on their experience, that's how they run their life. Those are the stories that play in their mind. So when my youngest was a year old, that's when I started the single mom journey. And when I went ahead and wrote the 10 best decisions, it was after that 1 year old had now become fully grown. She had gone to college, and now she's married and has her first baby. Um, so after we finished the 10 best decisions, I didn't want to leave moms just hanging. It's like, okay, I read the book, I closed the book. Now what? So that's when I started singlemomcircle.com. So it's just a website to go to where there's just all kinds of resources, and it's continually being added to, and it's just free for moms to go there. And one of my favorite aspects of that is there's you can, it's kind of self-identified. You want help with finances or family or faith or what have you. And there's one box there that says for kids. And when you click on that, there are authors that are reading their books aloud on video, so that they're showing the pictures and they're reading the books. And the fun thing is, it's like when a mom comes home and she's making dinner, she's kind of tired, and the kids are there, and you want to keep them close and you want to be together, but you also gotta focus on what you're doing. You can set the computer up next to you while you're working in the kitchen, and your child can watch a story while you're working together in the kitchen. So little things like that we've tried to come alongside and encourage moms.
We have some videos we have some children's books. I don't know if you knew that, but we have some
Mm,
videos like that. Maybe we could get them on your website and talk about
yes.
more about that. We'll talk about that after, but yeah, that your story is incredible. And one of the things you said about they didn't know what to do with you, I kind
Mm,
of felt the same way. I was the youngest. My dad he left when I was about 9, 10 months old, and never came back from our small town Pennsylvania he went back to Las Vegas, Nevada, his hometown, never came back. And so I was kind of for a few years I lived with my mom. But then I moved in with my grandparents, and I was kind of that kid that, you know, I had family that was jealous that I lived with my grandparents, and because they're like, why is he, I was considered the favorite by the grandparents, kind of thing. But people didn't know what to do with me. So I kind of speak about that a little more, how that made you feel as a kid. Because I felt that way as well. So you're speaking my language here.
you know, and that brings up another topic too, as to, how kids wind up at grandparents and what have you, because you have an interesting story around that. But I felt my personal experience is that when my dad left, my feeling was that I wasn't enough. If I would have been valuable enough, he would have worked at making the family stay together, and that he would have worked at that. And so I obviously am carrying that forward into being an adult. And then I felt the same way when the marriage broke up for me. Was if I were valuable enough, we would put the effort in, we would make it happen, we would work at it. And so I felt very not valuable, very not enough. And that's the thing that I would want churches to understand too, that when a single mom walks into the church and her kids are with her, we arrive already feeling not enough. And so if there's anything that kind of pushes on that at all, we retreat, we leave, we feel rejected. It's like, this is just another place where I'm not enough, I'm not going to fit. So I know that's what I've carried. And then children, I know for myself, and I watch with my own kids, and you probably felt the same, but this breakup of this really core important relationship, and having the people that we feel we should trust, they should be there for us all the time, to have them leave. There's a heartbreak, and there's a heartbreak that is very difficult to heal. And I think the only healing comes through the Lord. And I think that's what your ministry is trying to bring forward, is to, hey, we get it, press into the Lord, because this is the place where you can find your healing and your value and your worth. And I know for me as a solo mom, single mom, I would go see my mentor, and I'm crying and snotting and going through all the stuff that we needed to talk about. And she says to me, "What are you most afraid of?" And I'm like, that I'm not enough to love my children as much as they need, because they need so much. And she said, "You're not." And she said, even a family that is intact, where you've got a father and a mother that are there together working on this, they're not enough either. She
Yeah.
said, there is no human situation that is enough to fill the tank, the love tank that is needed by every human on this planet. And she said they need to know Jesus. So I recommend as soon as possible, start doing Bible time with your family, because as soon as we can introduce our children to the source of all the things that they're going to need, including healing and including all that love that they need, the sooner we can do that, the faster, the better, because then they
Yeah.
can lean on that. They can always go to the Lord.
Yeah, that's so true. It's your story just really relates to me and in the childhood sense of it. Um, but I really appreciate you talking about even the church, because that's one of the things our ministry we try to focus on is trying to help churches understand that these families, they often feel like they're and sometimes I feel like a broken record whenever I talk about it, but these families, they just don't feel connected to the church. We did a national tour. We've spoken over 200 churches on fatherlessness, and one of the things that single moms would tell us was, I don't feel connected to my church. There's nobody that cares about my kids." That's what they would say. And we would tell them, "Have you talked to your pastor yet?" And sometimes they said, sometimes they hadn't. Sometimes they would say, "Yeah, I already did." And he said, "There's nobody to spend time with my kids." And that's so heartbreaking
Right.
that no one in a church is willing to spend time with their kids. Can you speak to that a little bit about what you saw with that as a kid, and that also with and speak to people that are thinking about being mentors? And we're not bashing the church here. We're just trying to spread awareness about it, but also talk about the issue. Why won't people step up to the plate and do something about the issue of fatherlessness in the church?
Yeah, 85% of our solo parent families are not going to church, and 1 in 4 homes is single mom led. So,
Mm,
you go down your neighborhood and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, every 4th house, that is a single mom led home. So for the church, probably your biggest mission field is right in your backyard. It's right there in your neighborhood. And how do we welcome them in and make them feel comfortable? And so I know for me, when I was a kid and my parents split up and I was 11, I can remember walking into rooms in our church and people would stop talking. People that had been coming to our house for meals no longer interacted with my mother or I. And the what was kind of said from the pulpit was, we don't want to encourage divorce. We don't want to encourage the breakup of the family. So therefore, when there is a single mom, we just sort of don't welcome her. And so it was awkward. It was odd. I think they just didn't know what to do with us. The mega church that I've been at, I remember talking to our counselor there, and he said, the church doesn't know what to do with a single mom and her family. We just haven't done well with that. But now I think we're in a place where we have so many people that come from that background that now they're ready to say, hey, I'm part of that. It's like you're in the ministry now, and that is your background. And when we put together the 10 best decisions, and we got on this call with the people that were the acquisitions editors and the agents and whatnot, on that 5 people, I knew of 4 of us had, a divorce, a single parent situation in our background. So it's getting to where we're starting to address it, and that's a really good thing. Um, Pam and Bill Farrell, because she's my co-author, but they've also had a church. Bill's been a pastor. The smartest thing that they did was create what they called a success net for every single mom that came in, and they welcomed single moms. So I want to tell you about the success net.
mm,
Mm. They would get with that single mom and they would sit down with her and have a cup of coffee, and they'd say, what is it that you need? And so I know for me, I would have sat there and said, I have no idea how to find insurances. Like, how do you do the medical insurance and the car insurance and the house insurance? Like, this is, it's numbers. I don't do numbers. I have somebody who does my taxes to keep me out of jail because I don't get it. And so that's what I would have said. Can somebody do that? And so what Pam and Bill would do is they would find several people within their church, and they would make that for 6 months, they would sort of be their mentor. They would come alongside this mom in the ways that she needed. Some of them will say, gosh, my kid's got calculus, and again, in my situation, that sounds like a disease because it has to do with math. But sorry, your kid has calculus. Have you seen a doctor? So I could have used someone who would help mentor my children in that would just sit with them and go over homework because I don't get it. So they would, and somebody to list that your kids can read to and they'll listen. So that's what Pam and Bill would do. And then every 6 months, they would talk to the people and say, hey, what do we need now? Do we need to shift out your success net and bring in some other people for you? And then they would encourage these mentors, like invite them over for, after church for lunch, like you do for everybody else. And when you're going to go to the ball game with your family, take her kids, just treat them like normal people.
wow.
Also, the single mom doesn't necessarily want to be relegated to the single mom class, the singles, ministry. I didn't want to be there. I just want to be with real regular people and just have a real regular life, because single mom the single part is a relationship status, and it can change. And it doesn't mean that I'm unhappy with it. I just want to do life with people.
Yeah.
So the other thing that Pam and Bill found out, and this is something that churches have pushed back on, they're afraid that if they get involved with a single mom and her family, that the needs are going to be so overwhelming that they'll never be able to feed them and take care of them and fill those things. And what Pam and Bill discovered is that the children have these visitation things for the most part, where they go back and forth from one home to the other, which is based on how the law works in a divorce situation. So Pam said, every other weekend, I had moms that wanted something to do. And she said, they came to the church, and she said, our ministries were just on fire, because we had these really, interested and amazing women who wanted to do something that made a difference. And so she said they were some of the best volunteers that they had at their church. So I think that's another kind of myth, is that, single moms are just going to be a drain on the church, and they're not. They're generally very strong, very giving. We have places that we need help, but we're okay. And then there was also, and this is back kind of when my mom was single, there was this idea that those single moms were dangerous to the marriages because, they were, I've literally had people say in my Sunday school class to me, well, you're attractive. And I'm like, thank you, I think. But, if you think for 1 minute that I am going to make a play for somebody's husband, I would not do that to myself. I wouldn't do that to my children. I won't do that to the Lord. That's really not where we're going. Yes, you may find 1 or 2 people that do that, but we're all judged over that. But no, most moms are just like, I just want to have friends and be in community because it's what's good for all of us.
That's so good, and the stigma is what you're saying about the
Yeah.
single moms, and that's one of the things that we had a group in Las Vegas that we started. It was a single mom community group, and we invited out single moms all over Vegas through Facebook and stuff. We had about 30 single moms come to this group, and it was really just a time of encouragement. We used our book, The Single Mom Journey. We worked through that, and it was just a great time of discipleship and stuff like that. But these single moms, we didn't know what to expect. I'd never run a single mom group, and what we found large majority, 90% at least, were hardworking single moms that were just trying to figure it out. It wasn't what a lot of people think, where the single mom's going to be just a burden on the church, which sometimes it's okay that sometimes they can be, they are sometimes, and the church should be a help to them. But a lot of times they were just these moms that were trying to figure it out. They wanted what's best for their children. They were trying to get them plugged into a church. They worked. They might have had some extra needs, but they were doing their best. It wasn't like they were there just to look at the church as a welfare system kind of thing. The moms that were coming to this group, they were the ones that wanted to be discipled, and they wanted to grow so they could be better moms. They were already working jobs. Were just trying to better themselves. And so I think there is a stigma with single moms a lot of times, where they're just going to come and they're going to be a mooch on the church. They're going to be just a problem. And that's not the case. A lot of the moms that come to church, they just want to find resources and help for their families. They're trying to further their kids. They want to help their kids break the cycle. And so I really appreciate what you said there, because it's definitely really sad, the stigma that we see on fatherless families and single moms. If they're coming to your church already, then they're already on a great path of trying to succeed, and you can just really propel them forward, right?
Yeah, the best thing that a church can do is welcome them in, let them know there's a place for you. The lights on, the door's open. Here's a seat for you. You are welcome. Somebody's going to tell you about Jesus. And we need to know about Jesus, because then somebody can lead us to Ephesians 3, which talks about how great and how vast and how deep is the love of God. And us and our children need to know that there's love like that, and that it is there, and that also that there's something that's steady. God's word is the same all the time. God is the same all the time. When the things that we thought, and one of my kids said, everything I believed about my family was a lie, because that's how you feel when the whole thing isn't what you had hoped that it would be. But most of our single moms, they're employed. The majority of them are employed. Hardly any of them are taking any sort of support from like government or what have you. And those that do it until they get on their feet, and then they drop it. Less than half receive child support, and the average child support is $6,000 for the year. Well, covers braces, maybe it's, it's so yeah, they're out there and they're working hard. And yeah, so finding a place where we can land and also where we can learn about Jesus and where we can learn about how to walk well and where we can learn about setting a good example. And then I want my kids in the church to learn about Jesus, and I want them to see healthy relationships, because then they can go, oh, there's a model. And so then when they start making those decisions about choosing life partners, they're going to do a better job.
You're just spitting truth, right? I think this is great because, man, like I said, the stigma on single moms. I want to dive into some more things. There's so many things I want to talk about. One of the things was I read in your book a little bit about when you came home, the day you came home, your husband left. Can you just kind of talk about that for a few minutes and then just share how your family, I know you touched on it a little bit, but how your family overcame that? Just share about when your husband left and then how you overcame it.
Sometimes I wonder if we've actually overcome, because it's been a lot of years. The
Mhm.
heartbreak is still there. I watch my adult children and how they interact with one another and things that are, said and whatnot. And I just still hear this echo. It's almost like this ghost that sort of like just hovers and once in a while shows up. Holidays are difficult because holidays are divided. You have to go to two families. And that's hard on our two career kids. And they've also got in-laws that they need to deal with. And it gets tough. So there's that. So I think the thing that we did when we saw that he was gone, the kids just collapsed on the floor and wept. It
Mm.
was such a hard thing. And I'm sitting there holding the baby and I'm thinking, okay, I need to comfort them, but at the same time, who's going to comfort me, because I've got this giant heartache as well. And I think the one thing that we did steady, Eddie, is we had several things that were just consistent. And a lot of solo moms, if you're dividing time so that the child is also going to the other parent some of the time, I hear a lot of moms that they'll say, he doesn't do it my way. He does it different. The kids get away with this there. And how do I make him? How do I make him? How do I make him? And I'm like, you can't, because if we could have, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in now. The only thing that us as single moms can do is we have to be very consistent where we are and with who we are and with how our home runs. So there was a couple things that we did. One was we did Bible time every single night. And by Bible time, and if you go to the website, you can download a book that's called Let's Get Growing. And it's how we did Bible time. So grab the pieces out that work for you and apply them. And don't worry about the part that doesn't. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But basically, it was read a chapter of the Bible out loud each evening. And then I said a blessing over the children, something from scripture. And then we prayed together, and we prayed from youngest to oldest out loud, because I wanted my kids to feel confident and comfortable going to Jesus about anything. And so we would pray out loud. And then later on, as the kids could read, they took a turn, each of them reading the Bible, because I didn't want them to be intimidated by this giant book that's got hardly any pictures and tons of words. And so they got very comfortable with the Bible. So we knew every night we were going to do that. And even if we'd been out someplace and came in late, we still read like a
Mm.
psalm, we still prayed, and then we went to sleep. So that was consistent. And then there was a couple of rules that we had. One was, I want you to feel what you're feeling, because stuffing emotions is not good for us. And there's what we consider bad emotions compared to good ones, but God made them all, so they're not bad. Even the disappointment, the discouragement, the anger, those things, those are not bad. Those are just an indication that something has happened to our heart, and we can pay attention to that, and then we can take that to the Lord. So it was like there would be times where one kid is feeling fine about how things are, another kid's angry, another kid's disappointed. And so we had different feelings all the time. I have 7 children, so we have a
Mm.
lot of emotions, a lot of feelings that were coming up. So the rule was, feel your feelings, but do not insist that another person feel the same way that you do. And also do not take out how you're feeling on any of the rest of us. We'll come alongside, but we're not going to be anybody's, where you're taking it out on them. So that was super important. And then we had some rules too about um, don't call anybody a name unless it's a fun name. So at one point I was upstairs and I heard some scrapping downstairs, and I came to the top of the stairs and I hollered down. I'm like, what's going on? And so the youngest, she's like 4 or 5 at the time, comes to the bottom of the stairs and she said, my brother called me a name. And he shows up. He's a teenager. So he comes and stands behind her and he's just looking at me. And I'm like, that's unusual. So I said, well, what did he call you? He called me opinionated. I said, well, that's true. It's not a name, But it was just nice to have those boundaries that I wanted home to be safe, that the words that are going to be spoken back and forth would be kind and not more wounding. So we
Mm.
kind of, and then also like, people's stuff. And it was like, if it's your stuff, if somebody wants to, use it or borrow it, they have to ask. If somebody hurts it, then they replace it. But it was, just allowing people to show respect for one another so that then hopefully they would know how it feels to be respected. And then they will want that in future relationships, but they will also know how to give it.
Wow, that's so good. Now I'm in your book a little. I have your book pulled up on Amazon right now, and I see, and you had the forward by June Hunt, which I love. June Hunt. I've met her a few times, and she's a very nice lady, and just a sweet lady. My son usually goes with me to this one event, the NRB,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and she just speaks. She loves talking to him. He's 15 years old, and she speaks truth to him and tells him to be a witness and stuff like that. She just has a great heart for the Lord, and her story is so powerful. I love what she talks about, how she just her story of not having a like a real dad. I mean, she had a
Right.
fake name and just so many things there. So if you read the book, you can find out about that story. But I want to dive into your table of contents here. There's I love how you've laid it out, because it's, as a single mom, you have to make decisions. You have to decide different things in life. And so I want to talk about some of these decisions. Will you do you have your book with you?
I do. I
Maybe you already have
totally
it
do.
memorized, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
know with our books, like I don't have everything memorized in our books, so I understand. But in your table of contents, talk about some of the things there about deciding. Some of the things that you think are maybe the top three that you would say, hey, pay attention to these. Would you talk about a few of those?
Yeah, the thing with, decisions is when a marriage is falling apart, it doesn't happen now. It's a process. It generally has been crumbling for a while. And so there's all this pain and there's hurt that's just building and building and building. And then there's finally, that we start the separation and the divorce and what have you. We go into trauma with this. And when we go into trauma, the front part of our brain goes offline and it goes back to the fight, flight, freeze, or please response, which is built in by God. It's a great situation to have because that way, if you're being chased by a bear, you're not going to think about it, you're going to react. But when we're in trauma brain as moms, that's where a lot of times people will watch a mom's behavior and her decisions, what she's doing, and they're like, "What is she thinking?" And they'll watch the kids that are sometimes being down at the principal's office more often than the kids, from other homes. And so it's like, "Oh, those single mom kids, she's not a good mom. Look how they're behaving." Well, the truth is, when kids are in trauma brain, it comes out in their behavior, and so that's why they're down at the principal's office.
Yeah.
And, there's a wonderful gal that was the principal who had all the counseling and the study on this. And so she would talk with these kids because they're not bad kids. They're kids with a broken heart, and she would work on their heart. And same thing with the moms, we're offline. And so when I have to make decisions, I'm trying my best, but gosh, you call it fuzzy thinking, foggy brain. That's where we are. So Pam and I wanted to say, let's walk you through these steps. And as we do, mom's brain is going to come back into thinking mode and then she can move forward. But it takes some steps to be able to get back into thinking. And the trauma brain can go on and on and on for years. If you have a high conflict divorce, that's one where they go on for years. And so sometimes go from home to home, every holiday, every phone call, every, relocation, every time there's another letter that comes from the court, you go back into trauma brain. And so it's
Mm.
again trying to bring you back into being able to decide. So that's the whole part about how to make good decisions as a single mom, because that's really where we're struggling.
Yeah, and the topics here, we'll just look down through them real quick. Decide to thrive, decide to be decisive, decide to create a nurturing home, decide to be a proactive parent, decide to partner with God, decide to introduce your child to Jesus Christ, decide to live in community. I love that one. Decide to date or not date wisely, decide to respond in healthy ways, and decide to embrace your happily ever after. I love the community part because that's one of the things my mom, I believe that she really did right for us, was have us to go to church. We were invited to a church. I was a bus kid. Our family rode the bus to church together,
Yeah.
and then we eventually started driving. But we had that community, and I think that that's invaluable. We only have a few minutes left, but just real quick, talk about community. Why is that so important?
We need people to come alongside us. I need community because I need to hear a voice other than my own. I need to tell somebody what's going on and have them show me options that I haven't thought about and bring me out. And I will believe lies about myself and lies about God, but when I'm in the church community, I can hear the truth. I have people that will do Bible study with me that they'll help me take out those lies and put truth into it. Also, you just need to go have fun with somebody, and you need somebody to come over and help you, clean out your basement, and then you're going to go to their house and help them paint their walls and stuff. We need to do things together. You need to have somebody that you can call in the middle of the night that says, hey, I got to take my daughter in. I think she's got appendicitis. Can you come be with the rest of the kids while I'm gone? We need each other. And when we don't have it, being alone is not a good thing. And the other thing that happens too in community is that we make up stories about how people respond and react to us. And so I have a whole chapter in there about the 5 R's, which talks about when I first feel rejected, then I make up a story in my head about why I feel rejected. And then I go into resentment and resistance and revenge and repeat. And so we can wreck up our relationships without being aware of that. But by being in community, one of my daughters, if I'm like, yeah, this happened and I'm feeling this and and my daughter will say to me, well, what are the facts? Oh, well, the facts are, yeah, she just was grumpy that day, or I didn't, get a return call. The facts, then it helps me get out of that story that's in my head that I'm making up, that then is going to become my reality, which is then how I interact with people. So we need community sometimes that will speak truth and that will be remindful and that also will be gentle around us.
That's amazing. So good. We're going to wrap up now, but I wanted to ask you, will you share just a little bit more how to find you and find your ministry, but also tell us about singlemomcircle.com real quick.
Yeah, you can find me at PeggySueWells.com. So that's going to be my website where you're going to find out stuff about my books. So I am an author full time. So like all my novels are going to be there. And you'll find that at PeggySueWells.com. Then if you go over, you can click from Peggy Sue Wells over to Single Mom Circle, or you can go straight to singlemomcircle.com. And there you're just going to find resources. And I always have my doors open. I can't wait to put your stuff on the resource too, because I want to have really cool resources from people like you. And then they can just click and then go over when they want more from your ministry. So we're just going to keep adding to it, but there's a place there. And if you have a question, you can always go to the contact sheet, ask it in, and then I will get back to you and give you, my best answers to where you're going and what you're doing. So singlemomcircle.com, it just continues to grow. So come there with any of the resource questions that you're looking for.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's Peggy Sue Wells. She's doing a great ministry, an incredible job. She has all kinds of books, novels, and things like that. So definitely check those things out. Just an amazing woman, and I appreciate what you do. Just how you're just taking your situation that you had and you're just plowing forward and doing what God's called you to do. And you're breaking the cycle of fatherlessness too, with all the things that you faced as a child. And so thank you for what you do. I want to encourage our audience to check out her resources, PeggySueWells.com and singlemomcircle.com. I'm sure that you won't be disappointed by her resources and the things that they have there. You'll find some great encouragement. So thank you so much for being with us, Peggy Sue. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. It was a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Let's Talk About Fatherlessness. We want to now challenge you to take the next step by either starting a single mom community group in your church or with your ministry, or by joining our network of God is My Dad churches and ministries. Isn't it a great experience to be able to start a single mom community group?
Yeah, and it's just, if you talk to single moms, a lot of times what they'll tell you is the one thing they're lacking is that community, just a group that they can go in and they know there's no judgment. Everyone may not have the same situation. Everyone doesn't know what they're going through, but they can go in and they know there's no judgment. And it takes that kind of that restriction and that wall down for them so that they can share and then that they can grow in Christ.
And our single mom community groups are a wonderful ministry. And if your church can start one, we'd love to have you. We can help you get set up. We have the curriculum and all the resources you need. If you can't start one, we'd love to have you start by joining our network of churches and ministries, our God is My Dad network of churches and ministries, where you can get your church or your ministry on our map, and people can find you and find your ministry in your church so that they can get plugged into your church or ministry locally. So check that out. You can find all these resources at lifefactors.org. We have books, we have all kinds of content on there at lifefactors.org. Check it out today.